Time to talk about Tor. Now, Tor is an open source, anonymizing and encrypting volunteer-operated proxy network. Tor helps to reduce the risks of both simple and sophisticated network analysis by distributing your internet traffic over several layers or relays on the internet, so no single point can link you to your destination. And that's as you can see here. So this might be you, and you're going over a number of relays before you get to your final destination. When Tor is installed, it places a SOCKS 5 proxy on your client. So if you install it on Windows, you have a SOCKS 5 client on your Windows machine. And when correctly configured, all desired internet traffic can be made to go through that proxy. So you can see here, you would have your proxy on here, and it would force all the traffic to go via this path here. Packets entering the proxy are encrypted and sent into the Tor network, where they are forwarded to another Tor node and another, until finally reaching an exit node where the data is decrypted and sent to its final destination, for example google.com or Facebook. And that full connection would be called a Tor circuit, and there's your exit node there. In addition to this, so that's using the surface web, you can also access what is called hidden services, and these are accessible by these .onion URLs, as you can see here, which is essentially a URL to access the Tor darknet. An exit node in this case isn't required. What you'll do is, instead of coming out of here and exiting to Facebook or wherever it is you're going, you'll go to a server that's within the Tor network, which means your traffic remains encrypted end to end. A key point about Tor is that no individual node or relay ever knows the complete path that a data packet has taken. The client negotiates separate sets of encryption, as you can see illustrated here, or separate sets of encryption keys for each hop along the circuit to ensure that each hop can't trace these connections as they pass through. Tor uses the same circuit for connections that happen within the same 10 minutes or so, and later requests are given a new circuit to keep people from linking your early actions to new ones. So then you might go from here to here, to here, to here, and then out. Let's run through it using the diagrams provided by Tor themselves. So first step, here you are, Alice. You need to know what are the relays. What are the relays that you can connect to? That's the first thing you need. So in order to do that, you need to connect to something called a directory server. And this is the example of a directory server here. You can think of it a little bit like DNS. So you do an encrypted request to this directory server to obtain a list of Tor nodes. Next, Alice's Tor client picks a random path to the destination server. So here we can see the green encrypted lines, and coming out of the exit node to Bob or Facebook or whatever. And this bit here, crucially, is not encrypted. That will be plain text unless you are using an additional layer of encryption, such as HTTPS. Now remember, this is accessing the surface web. This is not accessing the darknet or hidden services. This is just accessing the surface web. And next, and if at a later time the user visits another site, Alice's Tor client selects a second random path again, so we can see a different path. And as we've already said, this can be every 10 minutes or so. Tor cannot solve all anonymity problems. It focuses only on protecting the transport of data. You need to use protocol-specific support software if you don't want the sites you visit to see your identifying information. For example, you can use the Tor browser, which we'll go through while browsing the web, to withhold some information about your computer's configuration. And we'll go into all that. So think of Tor as simply one element, one tool that enables you to disguise your location. It is just a tool, and it is just one tool. Tor does not provide protection against end-to-end timing attacks. If your attacker can watch the traffic coming in and out of your computer, and also traffic arriving at the chosen destination, he can use statistical analysis to discover that they are part of the same circuit. So Tor is not a panacea for privacy and shouldn't be relied upon as such. With the right methods and tactics, which we'll go through, it can be a very useful tool for aiding in staying anonymous. Another diagram here illustrates the layers of encryption, and this is where the term onion routing comes from. It's layers of encryption, and these layers are peeled back as you go through the Tor network. So the first relay will only see this, and we'll have these encrypted layers within it. The second relay will see this, and the third relay will see this, until finally the actual message is received by the destination host, which is not encrypted, which means that no individual node ever knows the complete path that a data packet has taken. The client is negotiating a separate set of encryption keys for each hop along the circuit to ensure that each hop can't trace these connections as they pass through. Let's go through this again. So your message is encrypted several times, and it's encrypted several times before it even leaves your device. Node A can only decrypt layer A, and when it's done that, it will be able to see the address of the next node, which is here, node B. After the packet reaches the next node, node B, it can only decrypt layer B, which is here, and so on through the layers. For each layer, you use a session key negotiated with the respective node's public key, so only that exact node can decrypt the layer with its session key. When the message reaches the exit node, all the layers have been decrypted and the message is now in plain text, unless an additional layer of encryption is used like SSL. A Diffie-Hellman handshake is used to establish those session keys. Diffie-Hellman allows session key negotiation where even a man in the middle observing the traffic would not be able to determine what the mutually agreed session key was. Tor also utilizes something called perfect forward secrecy, meaning the session keys are ephemeral, as they are only used briefly and then replaced. This then means in the future, if one of the nodes is compromised, previous data that passed through that node cannot be discovered, and private keys cannot be used to decrypt previous data. Tor basically hides your IP address on the network layer and does a reasonable job of it. Tor is primarily two things. It is an anonymizing network, which you can see here beautifully in front of you. This is actually a live representation of the Tor network, and it's a piece of software. The Tor software enables access to this Tor network and is known as the Tor browser, and previously was known as the Tor browser bundle, or TBB. So there is the Tor network and there is the Tor browser, which accesses it. Both are referred to as Tor. Most of the Tor relays operate in Central Europe, as you can see. In the UK, they're also in the west and east coast of the US, and available bandwidth is increasing year on year, if you see the chart at the bottom, which is great. From my experience in London, the speed and latency of Tor has increased a lot over time. The Tor browser consists of a hardened Mozilla Firefox ESR web browser, the Tor button, the Tor launcher, NoScript and HTTPS Everywhere Firefox extension, and the Tor proxy. It is standalone, so can be run from removable media, and is available for Windows, Mac OS X and GNU Linux, and it's also moving towards the mobile platform as well. To access Tor, you need to download, verify and install the Tor browser, and you can get that from this link here. It's pretty simple to install on most platforms. Click on download here, select the version that you want, Windows, Mac, Linux, and on this page it has instructions for how to do it. We've got Mac OS X, we've got Linux here, and we've got Windows. So that's pretty simple. And this is what the Tor browser looks like. It is Firefox, so you should be familiar with it. We have a couple of icons here. We can see NoScript. We go through this in the section on browsers, so you should be familiar with that. And then we have the Tor button here. So if we click on Test Tor Network Settings, we can see, congratulations, this browser is configured to use Tor, and that is our IP address. Let's go for a new identity. Test the settings. And there we go. We have a different IP address. We're essentially using a different circuit. And there you can see the circuit. This browser, we're going through this relay, then this relay, then this relay, and then onto the internet. And then you can see that the exit node is obviously the same as this. Then we have new Tor circuit for this site. That will create you a new circuit, but it will not restart the browser. There is a big difference between new identity and new Tor circuit for this site. New identity, its design principle is that all linkable identifiers and browser state must be cleared by this feature. That means that everything within the browser that could possibly be used for tracking is attempted to be wiped out. That's why the browser restarts when you click on new identity. Whereas on new Tor circuit for this site, it just essentially creates a new circuit. So you're presenting a different IP address, you're going through a different circuit, and you've got a different exit node. But still, you could have trackable information within the browser. The browser tries to stop that from happening anyway, but it's still possible. So that's the difference between the two. Then we have our privacy and security settings. You want this set as it is now, and this is not the default. You want it on high here. Any other setting for me really is pointless, because if you don't have a lot of these disabled, they are methods to de-anonymize you, and then it's a case of why are you using Tor. If you want milder anonymity, if there is such a thing, then you may want to take it down, because this will enable some websites to work. So really this should be about risk, I guess, and probably consequences. But for real anonymity, or to attempt it, you need this to be on high, and you definitely should not be recording browser history. You want to disable plugins such as Flash, definitely. You want to restrict third-party cookies, and you want to change details that distinguish you from other Tor users. Tor network settings, I'm going to cover that later on once I've explained a little bit more. And then we have check for Tor browser updates. If the Tor site is blocked due to censorship where you are, then you just need to send an email to gettor@torproject.org, which you can see there. And you need to include within the body of the message Windows, OS X or Linux, and you will receive a reply with links to download the Tor browser depending on the option that you have chosen. Alternatively, you can Google for Tor mirrors and see what you can find. You want to verify the legitimacy of the Tor browser, and you want to do that via signatures, so check out that page here in order to do that. Information on Tor is spread all over the place, and it's actually a little difficult to know where to go and where the information is going to be. So I'm going to just point you to a few places here just to help you out, because it's not immediately obvious. So here is the Tor forum. That's somewhere where you can get answers from. Here is the Tor General FAQ. That's worth a read to get up to speed, answers a lot of the common questions. Then there is a blog that gives you the latest information on Tor, and we can see here it's talking about the Tor browser, the hardened browser. The Tor hardened browser is something to keep your eye on. This is a separate project. It's a extra hardened version of the Tor browser, which is mainly designed to prevent exploitation of memory corruption bugs, but is a work in progress. So that may be something you want to check out as opposed to the regular Tor browser. Then there's also the Tor wiki, which has useful information in it as well. As far as third-party sites go, Reddit, the Tor subreddit, is very good and worth being a member of. And the last place for a really in-depth look at what Tor is have a look at the design documents. The reason I know so much about Tor is because I have read the design documents and then looked at the network traffic and applications forensically. But you have to start with the design documents. What Tor does and does not do, and what Tor is designed for, and what it will and will not protect you from. Without special configuration, Tor is designed to do the following. So it anonymizes the browser's connection to websites, and that's the browser only. You have to specially configure other applications to use the Tor proxy if you want them to use Tor. So after installing, only the Tor browser uses Tor. Don't make the mistake of thinking other applications now go through Tor just because you've installed the Tor browser. That's not the case. It's only the Tor browser that goes through Tor unless you make special configuration. It focuses on protecting the transportation of data only. It prevents your internet service provider or local network from knowing what sites you are visiting. It prevents a site you are visiting from knowing who you are unless you tell them in some way, like by logging in. So for example, if you go to Facebook via Tor and log in as yourself, that's pretty pointless. It prevents tracking because sites have no idea if you have visited the site before. You are coming from different IP addresses and you are not maintaining tracking information within the browser. It can help you evade censorship, and it allows you to access the Tor darknet or hidden services via the .onion addresses. Some of the things now that Tor does not protect you from. Tor doesn't prevent your ISP or local network or country or whoever is watching from knowing that you use Tor unless special configuration is made. This is because Tor is a distinctive SSL TLS connection. With deep packet inspection, Tor traffic can be identified. You can use bridges, chain VPNs, pluggable transports, and other workarounds to avoid this detection, which we will cover shortly. Tor does not prevent a site you are visiting from knowing you are using Tor. The Tor exit relays are known, and the Tor browser has a unique fingerprint. Tor does not make applications other than the Tor browser use Tor, as I've already mentioned, including anything you download, like for example a PDF or executable. Once downloaded and accessed or run, it could reach out and de-anonymize you. It won't go through the Tor network. It can just reach out, connect to a server of some sort, and then that server is going to know your real IP address and where you're coming from. Tor cannot remove all browser vulnerabilities, solve all browser vulnerabilities, and stop all browser exploits. It just attempts to mitigate them. It's not going to protect you against any active content if you are allowing it to run. Java, JavaScript, Adobe Flash, Adobe Shockwave, QuickTime, Real Audio, ActiveX controls, and VB scripts and binary applications. Setting the security and privacy setting on high will mitigate JavaScript. Only JavaScript is installed and enabled by default. All the rest of the others that I've gone through are not present unless you install them. If you install them, you are at risk. The Tor browser does not protect you against vulnerabilities and attacks related to that active content. Therefore, it is not going to protect you from issues related to add-ons and extensions that you install. It's not recommended you install any other extensions or add-ons. There's no protection from malware that is on websites or especially on your laptop. There's no protection from your operating system being compromised. No protection from hardware compromises. It's not going to prevent someone watching over your shoulder. There's no protection from man in the middle or man on the side attacks. There's no protection from attachments. It doesn't remove personal information from documents if you're going to send them. And there's no protection from doing something stupid, like logging into a website and thinking your circuit is still anonymous when you've logged in as your real identity. This is check.torproject.org. TorCheck will let you know if you're connected to the Tor network and if it's with the Tor browser. You will also be able to see if JavaScript is enabled or disabled. If we scroll down here, we can see JavaScript is disabled, and we can also see our IP address and make sure that that is not our actual ISP assigned IP address. It's always good when you use Tor, the very first thing that you do is to check that Tor is functioning correctly and that you have your security settings set the way that you want them. Make this your routine. Always check this page that your IP address has changed. JavaScript, make sure that that is disabled and your security settings are high. The browser enables JavaScript and other weak controls by default, so if security, privacy and anonymity is imperative to you, then you have to change the setting to high security, as you see here. This will obviously restrict the functionality of some sites, as we've discussed in some length, as you know that JavaScript is required and some of these other features on some sites. That unfortunately is the sacrifice that you have to make. The Tor project provides some solid advice on using Tor, which is worth us going through now. First one is use the Tor browser. If you have gone through the tracking and browsing section on the course, you will know the many ways that the browser can be manipulated to give up your privacy and anonymity. So you have two choices: either use a Tor browser or harden a browser yourself, as detailed in the browser section, or you could find another alternative hardened browser, but the Tor browser is the easiest option and better option for Tor security, privacy and anonymity. The Tor project is also saying here that if you try to use another application, like for example your email client with Tor, it is risky because it might leak information like DNS, and we will talk more about that shortly and mitigations to prevent that. I'm sure a lot of people consider Tor for torrenting. Unfortunately, torrents are leaky, and if we look here, there's a good post on it and a research paper if you want to understand more. But what they say is that torrent file sharing applications have been observed to ignore proxy settings and make direct connections even when they are told not to. What I mean by direct connections is connections that are not going over Tor. Even if your torrent application connects only through Tor, you will often send out your real IP address in the tracker GET request, because that's how torrents work. Plus, you slow down the Tor network, which they don't really appreciate. The next one is don't enable or install browser plugins, and that will apply to extensions as well. Yes, don't install any add-ons or extensions to the Tor browser, as this will alter your browser fingerprint and uniquely identify you, and those extensions or add-ons could make you more vulnerable. They could be a platform for attack, so don't do it unless you really know what you're doing. And the next one, use HTTPS versions of websites. As it says here, Tor will encrypt your traffic to and within the Tor network, but the encryption of the traffic to the final destination website depends upon that website, i.e. you have to be connecting to an HTTPS website. You have to use HTTPS or end-to-end encryption to stop the exit node seeing all your traffic, which is pretty obvious. And in fact, anyone who is observing the exit node traffic can also read the traffic if it's unencrypted and inject into your traffic. Remember, it's not just that they can read your traffic. If it's unencrypted, they can inject malicious code into the traffic as well if they are a man in the middle once it has left the exit node. Don't open documents downloaded through Tor while online. There's no protection from attachments using Tor, which we've already mentioned. The usual precautions for any downloaded file should obviously be taken. If you just open a PDF file, it can just connect out and not go via Tor, so don't do it. We'll discuss mitigations later to that. And the last one, use bridge and or find company. So we're going to talk about what bridges are and how to use them shortly in another video. So that's a video on what Tor does and does not do, what it is designed for, what it will protect you from, and what it won't protect you from. So I hope that has helped to give you an idea, an overview of why or if you should be using Tor. Now for directory authorities and relays within the Tor network. Hard-coded into every Tor client is a list of 10 directory authorities, or DAs. These DAs are distributed around the world and are in charge of distributing an ever-changing master list of all known Tor relays and their capabilities. This list is called the consensus, and that's what you see here in front of you. This is the consensus. Now, I know you won't be able to see this, but if you go to this link, this is an infographic if you want to have a full breakdown of the consensus and want to know a little bit more about it by Jordan Wright. The DAs play a very important role as they are the gatekeepers that choose what relays are valid and when. By default, as you know, Tor bounces connections through 3 relays. This circuit is chosen at random based on the bandwidth that is available in each country, although you can manually configure the choice of relays if you wish. This is not recommended though. Trust is distributed and there is no central ownership. Because it is an open network, anyone, including your adversary, can run these relays. Although there is a vetting process, but because of the onion routing, they cannot see the full circuit even if they own a relay. If they own 3 relays, they would be able to see the full circuit, but they wouldn't necessarily know that it was you going in and you going out unless they performed a correlation attack. We will discuss that shortly. Each relay has a specific role. You can see here, by the way, this is a relay, this is a relay, this is a relay on the diagram. The entry or guard relay is the entry point to the Tor network. Relays are selected to serve as guard relays after being around for a while, as well as having shown to be stable and having high bandwidth. The middle relay is used to transport traffic from the guard relay to the exit relay. This prevents the guard and exit relay from knowing each other. The exit relay is the exit point at the edge of the Tor network. These relays send traffic to the final destination intended by the client. The exit relay can see the data sent by the client since they have to pass that data to the destination. This means that if sensitive data is passed unencrypted, say over HTTP, FTP or other clear text protocols, the exit relays can sniff the traffic, they can inject into the traffic malicious code, as I have already mentioned. This is a known vulnerability, it is not part of the Tor design to protect against. You personally can volunteer to run a Tor relay if you have your own server or VPS. A sensible question to ask might be, do you get more anonymity if you run your own relay? Because lots of traffic would go through your relay, so surely this would make it harder for an adversary to know what traffic belonged to you and what traffic belonged to someone else. Well, the answer depends on the type of attacks you're expecting, which we will cover in its own section in Tor Weaknesses, the various attacks. Let me read what the Tor project has to say on running your own relay and whether this makes you more anonymous. An attacker who owns a small number of Tor relays, he will see a connection from you, but he won't be able to know whether the connection originated at your computer or was relayed from somebody else. There are some cases where it doesn't seem to help if an attacker can watch all of your incoming and outgoing traffic. Then it's easy for him to learn which connections were relayed and which started at you. In this case, he still doesn't know your destination unless he is watching them too, but you're no better off than if you were an ordinary client. There are also some downsides to running a Tor relay. First, while we only have a few hundred relays, the fact that you're running one might signal to your adversary that you place a high value on your anonymity. Second, there are some more exotic attacks that are not well understood or well tested that involve making use of the knowledge that you are actually running a relay. For example, an attacker may be able to observe whether you are sending traffic even if he can't actually watch your network by relaying traffic through your Tor relay and noticing changes in traffic timing. It is an open research question whether the benefits outweigh the risks of running your own relay. A lot of that depends on the attacks you are most worried about. For most users, the Tor project thinks it is a smart move to run a relay. Personally, I'm not really sure either, but what I do know is it's always good to be uninteresting, and running a relay is definitely interesting to an adversary, and I would never recommend doing it from your home either. A tip: you are less likely to get complaints from your provider if you run a guard or middle relay, as all they would see would be encrypted traffic. Running an exit node is a risky business, as you have no control over what traffic goes through it and out of it unencrypted, and to where. You may get served with copyright violation notice, sued, or even get a knock at the door and arrested. It does happen. If you are thinking about setting one up, check out this for configuring a Tor relay on Debian and/or Ubuntu. If you are going to run one of the best things to do is be very open about it, so you can justify the traffic as not being your own, and the Tor project helps a lot with this. So if you are going to run one, check this out, understand the legal side of being a relay operator. The Tor project should provide guidance on any legal issues, but it is of course at your own risk. But it is good if you can support the Tor project. Tor bridges. Because the consensus list of relays is available to everyone, it's easy for a government, a law enforcement agency, or any network or adversary to block you from using Tor by blocking all of the relays that are in the consensus. A bridge is an unpublished relay to attempt to solve the problem of the Tor relays being blocked. The bridge becomes your first relay instead of the guard relay. You might need to use a bridge if using Tor is blocked by censorship, or using Tor is dangerous where you are, it's illegal where you are, or it's considered suspicious to your adversaries. If you live in an uncensored area, bridges are not necessarily more secure than using a normal entry guard. A Tor project, the page that you can see in front of you now, called Bridges, provides the details of a few bridges at a time to stop all the bridges from being known. You can get new bridges from this URL here. So you click on here. Now you have the option to just get normal bridges by clicking here, vanilla bridges as they call them, or if you want to use pluggable transports and bridges and/or IPv6, then you come down here. We will discuss what pluggable transports are shortly. So for the advanced ones here, so let's go on here, fill this in. And there we are, 3 bridges, their IP address, the port that they use, and their ID. If you can't reach this URL, then send an email from a Gmail or a Yahoo account. It only works for those currently, to bridges@torprojects.org with get bridges in the message body, and they will send you some bridges like this. Bridges are generally less reliable and slower than guard relays. So now we need to use these. Let me show you how to put these into your browser. Let's select them, copy, and here we are in the Tor browser. You come here, Tor network settings, my internet service provider ISP blocks connections to the Tor network, enter custom bridges, paste, and that's it. Okay, then let's try a search. And that was actually pretty quick. Often your bridges can be a little slow. And there we can see the circuit. Check to see whether we are on Tor successfully, and yes we are. Going in at the United States, through France and out of Ukraine. If your adversary was able to get a hold of the full bridge list, they would effectively be able to block Tor. If interested, there are a couple of papers here about how that very thing might be done. This one here, and also this one here. The obvious way is to scan the whole internet continuously using tools like ZenMap, which make the job quite easy. This is ZenMap if you're not aware. It's an open source network scanner that enables people to perform internet-wide network studies. This paper reveals one group was able to identify at one point 79 to 86% of the total Tor bridges. The likes of the Chinese government and other censoring nations will likely be doing the same sort of tricks, or will be doing it soon. You can set up your own bridge to help yourself or others bypass censorship. Debian would be the best operating system to use. There's also Unix, which we have gone through, which is an option as it is built to be a relay and a bridge, and of course is Debian. With Turnkey Linux, you could up and down servers extremely fast to prevent your bridges from being blocked or found. Turnkey, as you'll probably know already, is a service that I recommend. It integrates with Amazon Web Services, and you can deploy bridges very quickly, literally in minutes, and then take them down or stop them once you've finished using them. A bit of a warning here: if someone offers to help you out of your censorship problem who you don't 100% trust by giving you a Tor bridge to help you get access to Tor, be aware this could be a monitored bridge and a deliberate trap, so avoid. If getting caught for using Tor has serious consequences for you where you are, Tor bridges are not recommended by me. They are only a short-term workaround, and any adversary of sophistication will identify that you're using a bridge if they happen to observe the traffic. It's not really that difficult for them. Other options to bypass Tor being blocked, which might be safer than using bridges, include tunneling Tor through other privacy and anonymity services like VPNs, nested VPNs or SSH, or using an off-site connection, which we cover in its own section, but only if using those has no consequences as well. So that's bridges, unlisted relays to help avoid censorship and to enable you to use Tor if it is dangerous, illegal, or considered suspicious to do so where you are. Tor pluggable transports and obfuscation of traffic. If you are stuck behind a firewall or other such device, such as the one here on the diagram, that blocks ports, you may need to use relays that are open on ports 80 and 443, or whatever ports are allowed by that device that is blocking you. Usually port 80 and 443 are allowed, as that is web traffic. And if you want to configure your Tor browser to go through a special port to get through that blocking device, you need to go here, Tor network settings. Then we want to go to this computer goes through a firewall that only allows connections to certain ports, and then you want to specify the ports here and click OK. There are less relays that run on specific ports, so you may have trouble with your network connection if you specify some strange or unusual port, but 80 and 443 should be okay, but it may be slower. Another way that Tor is blocked is through Deep Packet Inspection, or DPI, and Active Network Analysis. This is because it's possible to identify ordinary Tor traffic based on byte patterns that appear in it. DPI is probably Tor's greatest nemesis for blocking Tor. In fact, DPI is the best defense for anyone trying to stop traffic that they don't want. A number of countries are using Deep Packet Inspection, DPI, to classify internet traffic flows by protocol. For example, in 2011, the Great Firewall of China developed the ability to actively detect Tor. Tor uses bridge relays to get around a sensor that blocks known relays' IP addresses, but a sensor that uses Deep Packet Inspection to recognize and filter Tor traffic flows can, if they see the traffic, the Tor traffic, block the connection. Standard Tor bridges don't solve this problem. But something called pluggable transports attempt to mitigate the blocking of Tor through Deep Packet Inspection. Pluggable transports transform the Tor traffic flow between the client and the bridge. If you see here, this is what ordinary Tor traffic looks like. This is what Tor traffic looks like when it's been put through a pluggable transport. In this case, it's the OBS2 pluggable transport, and this is the OBS3 pluggable transport. The traffic signature or fingerprint is changed from the ordinary Tor traffic to something else based on the pluggable transport. This way, sensors who monitor traffic between the client and the bridge will see innocent-looking transformed traffic instead of the actual Tor traffic. External programs can talk to Tor clients and Tor bridges using the Pluggable Transport API to make it easier to build interoperable programs. And here are some of the pluggable transports the OBS proxy, Flash proxy, FTE, Scramble Suite, Meek, OBS 4. Some transports try to make the traffic look like another protocol, and others try to make it look random. And some transports are aimed at evading IP-based blocks rather than content-based blocks. So these pluggable transports sounds cool. How do we configure our browser to use pluggable transports? Here, Tor network settings, then select my internet service provider ISP blocks connections to the Tor network, then select connect with provided bridges. And there you have your different pluggable transports. The pluggable transport must be supported by the bridge or relays that you connect to. No one transport will solve the problem. The transports need to be variable and evolve as detection evolves. They need to look plausible, but extra scrutiny by a sensor will likely reveal what it is. But the idea is to get past the initial scrutiny. You could set a pluggable transport up on your own bridge, and for example, if we look here, we've got Meek Amazon, Meek Google. If you were to use that, this would look like you are connecting to Google and/or Azure and/or Amazon. The idea here is that the sensor will find it hard to block the IP address that's associated with Amazon and Amazon services, because obviously this is used by that company and it will be used for non-Tor use as well, which means wholesale blocking of those IP addresses could be a problem for the user community that the sensor is serving. What you can see here is ordinary Tor, and this is a hex dump of the first thing that a client sends to its entry node. It's a TLS client hello message, as the outer layer of the Tor protocol is in fact TLS. Here you can see the cipher suite list in blue, the server name in green, and the TLS extensions in this brownie color. This is a decode from Wireshark. This does not look the same as, say, Firefox or Chrome connecting to a website via HTTPS using TLS, which is why Deep Packet Inspection can tell you are using Tor, or it's one method by which Deep Packet Inspection can tell that you are using Tor. And here on the left we can see a client hello using the pluggable transport Meek, and on the right we can see a client hello of Chrome 33 on Mac OS X. Meek is trying to pretend to look the same, or at least similar enough so that DPI doesn't flag it as being a problem. But as we can see, one of the big differences is that Chrome is supporting 20 cipher suites and Meek only 13. So it's these sort of differences that somebody using DPI, and even with pluggable transports, with closer examination, they can tell that something is amiss. It is an OPSEC principle to be uninteresting, and using anonymous bridges with a pluggable transport could make you uninteresting until the traffic is analysed. Then you become more interesting. If getting caught for using Tor has serious consequences, Tor bridges and pluggable transports are not recommended. They are only short-term workarounds, and any adversary of sophistication will identify that you are using them if they start to pay closer examination to the traffic, as I have illustrated. Other options to bypass Tor being blocked, which might be safer, include tunneling Tor through other privacy and anonymity services, as I've already said, like VPNs, nested VPNs, SSH, assuming they are allowed or they are viable where you are, or using off-site locations, or potentially mobile communication, all of which we discuss in its own section. There are two main ways to configure Tor. One is through the GUI in the main browser, as you can see here, and the other is through configuration files. The main configuration file is the torc file, that's spelled Torrc, and making changes in the GUI edits this file. It edits the torc file and sometimes other files as well. But the default configuration should work in most cases, and I don't recommend you make any changes until you really understand what you're doing and have read through the Tor documentation. Here we are in Windows, and you'll find the talk file in the Tor browser, Tor browser, data, Tor folder, and there is the talk file. And in Windows, that's what it looks like. But in Tails, for example, this is what it looks like. Lots more information in there. On OS X, if you want to find the talk file, you need to go to your Applications folder, then find your Tor browser icon. Then you need to right click or control click, show package contents, and then navigate through to Tor browser, data, Tor, and then talk. So that's the full path there to it, and that's the file. And it looks like that, pretty similar to the one in Windows. If you can't find it on any of the operating systems, just do a search for the talk file, TORRC. Here on Linux, you'll find the talk file where you installed it, and then browser, Tor browser, data, Tor, and then there's the talk file. And if we have a look at the file, we can see it looks like the Windows and the Mac talk file. Tor also puts the talk file in user local etc Tor if you compile Tor from source, and etc Tor or etc if you installed a pre-built package. To get familiar with the talk file and how to use it, there is a manual here, and if you go down you can see the command line options here. And a bit further down you can also find the general options. These are the options used within the talk file. You can also man Tor, and there's a lot of information in there as well, which is quite useful. Tor also provides a sample Tor configuration file for common configurations, which is quite useful. So if you're struggling, maybe you have examples in here, and it's got some good commentary as well. So I'll give you an example of editing the talk file. One of the common changes that people make is to alter the geographic location of their entry or exit node, and here we are on the FAQ, and we can see the entries that are required in order to change them. So it's entry nodes, exit nodes, and if we go down here we actually need to put in the country code, and as it says here, it's the ISO standard for country code. So it's these, DE for Germany, for example. So let's go into Debian. Let's edit the talk file. So that's going to force the Tor browser to go via a German node, German entry node. And that's going to force us to go through the United Kingdom, or Great Britain, GB. So let's save that. And there we are. So we've gone through Germany, exited out of the United Kingdom. You may have noticed here you can also specify the actual relays that you want to use, or different relays that you want to use, by putting in their fingerprint here. If we have a look at the consensus here, let's pick a relay at random, kittens on Tor. And we're going to go to Atlas here, which is atlas.torproject.org. Paste that in. And here we can see the relay and its ports. Got some flags on what it does. It's a fast one. Let's click on here, and there's a fingerprint there. So we could select that and go by that relay instead. Note that if you pick a relay, it has to be the sort of relay that you're after. So it would have to work or function as a guard if you're going to have it as a guard. There may or may not be a benefit to changing the country or relay of the entry and/or exit node. It all depends on the type of attack you're trying to mitigate. If your adversary is using secret deals with telcos to enable man on the side attacks, then using relays out of their sphere of influence because they maybe can't get to that particular telco will definitely help you. If, on the other hand, your adversary is performing some sort of Sybil attack in combination with a correlation attack where he can run his own relays, it's not going to help you. I'll talk more about Sybil attacks and correlation attacks in their own section. Tor chooses circuits based on network load. If you make manual changes to the circuit, this could make you stand out. I don't recommend you make manual changes to the circuits unless you really know what you're doing. In order for the configuration within the torque file to take effect, you need to restart the Tor browser. Or, alternative, you can also issue a pkill -psyop Tor, which will have the same effect, but usually it's better to just restart the Tor browser. To finish off, I'm going to go through the example torque file with you so you can get a better idea of the syntax and what it is you can do with a torque file. So let's go down here. We can see here these hashes. All of these hashes need to be removed for a command such as this to take effect. Hashes are just comments as they are in most documents. So here, line 18, this tells Tor to open a SOX proxy on this port 9050, which is for all applications to use to send traffic via Tor. And here we are binding it to a specific IP address and port. Set it to SOX port 0 if you're only running a relay and not sending traffic through the relay yourself, so that might be a rare occasion. We're going to talk more about the SOX port shortly and how you put other applications through it. These are the entry policies to allow or deny SOX requests based on their IP address, and I think the syntax is pretty obvious. That's an accept, and that is for this network with a /16 subnet mask. Go down a little bit. We can see here this enables logging. It enables notice level logging to this file, and then we have a similar one here where we've got debug level logging to this file, and then we can also send to syslog as well. But warning, you don't want to be doing logging if you're concerned about local forensics. This would only be for testing or if you don't care about local forensics. 49, this is to run Tor as a daemon process in the background. Say for example, if you don't want the Tor browser running at the same time, this does not work in Windows as it says here. This is the control port set at 9051. Applications can remotely control Tor by issuing commands to this port, and you can establish authentication with these, and as default it is set up for authentication using cookie authentication. At least it is on the ones I've seen. Move down a little bit. If you're wanting to run a hidden service, that means a service that is on the dark web or a .onion server. This is part of how you would start to enable it. So here, this is how you set the directory for what people will connect to. And this is how you set the port to redirect to localhost and then port 80. And here we have other examples. As I have said, I recommend Debian and/or Unix for setting up hidden services or relays or bridges. And for setting up relays, we have the options here for how you do that. The OR port here, set at 9001. This is the port used to advertise for incoming Tor connections if you are a relay. If you're wondering what ports are used to connect to by default in Tor, or what ports you might need to open on a firewall, well, Tor attempts to connect on any port that is advertised in the directory as an OR port for making Tor connections, or a dir port for fetching updates to the directory. There are a variety of these ports. Many of them are running on port 80, 443, 9001 and 9030, but many other ports are used, and as you can see here, you can configure this to be whatever port it is that you want. You can here set up the DNS name for your relay, and Here you can set up the nickname for your relay. Then you've got a whole bunch of bandwidth options for limiting bandwidth, throttling traffic, allowing bursty traffic. This is what port to advertise for directory connections, which we mentioned just a second ago. And here are your exit policy rules. So here, for example, as it says here, it's allowing IRC ports, these are the IRC ports, on IPv4 and IPv6. Here we're accepting NNTP ports, that's news groups. Here we're accepting NNT ports, but on IPv4 only, and this is IPv6 only, and no exits allowed. I think you get an idea of the kind of syntax. Now if you want to set up your relay as a bridge, that's with this command here, and if you want to run a private bridge, then that's this command here. The talk-defaults file contains the default settings for Tor. This is a file not intended to be edited. The talk file is what should be edited, but this shows you what Tor is essentially set up to do. And here we can see we have our SOCKS port open on 9150, allowing IPv6 traffic, etc. We've got our control port here. There's the cookie authentication for the control port, and these are the pluggable transports that are available for this Tor configuration. But as I said, you do not edit that file, you do not edit this file, you would edit the talk file, which is this one, and that would overwrite the default file. So that's the talk file, hope that has helped. If you want to tunnel the traffic from any other application through Tor, such as maybe your email client, you want that to go through Tor, you have to be very careful how you set it up. The Tor browser is built not to leak protocols, but other applications may not be. For example, your email client may send all the email through Tor and then not do DNS through Tor, instead doing it normally, ignoring its proxy settings. This does happen, it has happened, so you have to be very careful. That is the big worry with using other applications with Tor. Here we're in the talk defaults file, which shows us we are running the SOCKS port on 9150 and the control port on 9151. So it's a SOCKS port that we care about for setting up other applications, 9150 in this case. If we run a netstat, currently Tor is not running, so the SOCKS port is not there. Let's start Tor, and there we go, we can see it's established here, and listening here is our control port, and there's the SOCKS port that we care about, 9150. Applications such as any browser that supports SOCKS proxies can be configured to connect to this port, or whatever port you choose to assign it as, and tunnel traffic through the Tor SOCKS proxy. So let me show you how you do that in Iceweasel. So here we are in Iceweasel, which is essentially Firefox on Debian. We need to go to Preferences, Advanced, Network, Settings, and here we need to enter what is already entered in here, the local host, and then whichever port we've got it set to. Okay, and that's done the search through Tor. And we can check we're on Tor, and we can see here, congratulations, this browser is configured to use Tor. However, it does not appear to be the Tor browser, so of course it does not have all of the hardening and security, and of course we cannot see the circuit and all the other things. Now here we are in the Tor browser, and if we do exactly the same thing, unsurprisingly, we will also see that this is set up to use the SOCKS proxy 9150. We can change the SOCKS proxy port if we wanted to. Save that. Then let's restart Tor. So here we can see the port has changed to 6666. and we would need to configure this to work on the new port. And there we are, going through the 6666 port that we've just set up in the talk file. Pretty straightforward. With SOCKS proxies, each application, so here for example Iceweasel and the Tor browser, uses a different Tor circuit. This protects against identity correlation through Tor circuit sharing. But for optimal separation between contextual identities, I recommend you use separate workstations or machines per identity. You would not want to be even sharing the same SOCKS port, even though you have separate circuits. And just to demonstrate, I've changed Iceweasel back to 6666, and we can see at the same time through the same SOCKS port we are using different circuits. We have different exit node IP addresses. But there's no guarantee that Iceweasel or any application will send all traffic through the Tor proxy. This is the problem. It could, and classically it's DNS that's the problem, send DNSs unproxied. You can't guarantee that whatever application you're using will abide by the proxy setting. If you're going to be setting up other applications, then you need to check for leaks, and Tor has some functionality that allows for that. If you set test SOCKS 1 in the talk file and then watch the logs as you use your applications, Tor will then log for each SOCKS connection whether it is using a good variant or a bad variant. If you want to automatically disable all bad variants, then you need to also set that in the talks file. Obviously save and restart the browser. But really, the absolute best way is to look at the traffic using a protocol analyzer such as Wireshark on your router or firewall, or on the workstation that the Tor browser is on, to see if there are any leaks. And you might want to run it for a little while as well. Personally, I prefer to have it on the router and or firewall, as all traffic goes through that if it's going to the internet. On the workstation, maybe something will be missed. In the section on detection and monitoring, network security, Wireshark, we cover this very thing. But let me just give you a quick example here. So I'm SSHing into the router and pulling off the network traffic live with TCP dump and piping it into Wireshark. And there we are, it's doing it now. So let's run some traffic. And there we are, you can see the traffic, DNS query. So I was concerned that there was a DNS request here that was actually being sent out of Tor. So, but yeah, so what that is that's Wireshark itself resolving IP addresses, which is a good example of how other applications that you're using don't go over the Tor network. So let's clear that. But the rest of the traffic that we see is all Tor traffic as is expected. As I said, we cover this in its own section, monitoring and checking for traffic. You should also consider preventing the leaks by firewalling the traffic. Set a deny all rule for everything apart from Tor. See the firewall section for recommendations on firewalls and how to do that for the various operating systems. In the example we've just gone through with Iceweasel, it was easy to send the application through Tor because it supported SOCKS proxies, but not all applications have some sort of configurable way of sending its traffic through a SOCKS proxy. If it doesn't, the Tor project suggests to install Privoxy, which is here, but you're going to need to spend some time understanding Privoxy as it's for advanced users. If you're using an open source router, you could configure Privoxy there, and it's easier. DDWRT, for example, has Privoxy set up, and there is somewhat of a GUI for it. And Privoxy has an example configuration for Tor with Privoxy. Other than Privoxy, if you're unable to use the application's native proxy settings, you might be able to force the application to use a proxy using something called a proxifier. And here in front of you are a whole bunch of them. Proxy chains that you can see here. I demo proxy chains and how to use that in the area on proxies. But again, just a word of warning, you do also have to trust these proxifiers. Whonix can be used to run other applications through Tor, even if they don't have proxy functionality. Let me remind you about how Whonix does this. What you can see here is a representation of the Whonix workstation here, the Whonix gateway here, and then the 3-hop circuit of the Tor network. First node, second node, third node, and then the destination. The Whonix gateway here acts as both a transparent Tor proxy and a SOX proxy. Transparent means that even if downloaded applications aren't configured to use Tor, they will still go through the Whonix gateway and be transparently Torified. Transparent as in transparent Tor proxy. This is a good feature. It means you can download and install things that you need, and they don't need to be specifically configured to use Tor. They can go through the transparent proxy. But note, all trans-proxied apps use the same Tor circuit. So as you can see illustrated here, they go through the same nodes, they'll have the same exit IP address and be seen as the same to the destination. Now SOX proxies, on the other hand, is used when an application is specifically configured to use Tor as a proxy. So for example, the proxy settings within the browser. My personal recommendation and the safest way to run other applications over Tor is to use Whonix and use it with cubes if you can. One of the main goals of Whonix is to greatly reduce the risk of any additional software not exclusively designed to use Tor, or indeed proxies, to still use Tor. If you install an application on the Whonix workstation, you're good to go without the need to worry about protocol leaks. You don't get stream isolation, but that's better than it not going over Tor. You can use a Tor hardware router with a transparent proxy if your application doesn't have proxy settings, or a SOX proxy, or with a SOX proxy if your application does have proxy settings, or you can use a router that forwards Tor traffic. You can build one of these yourself, such as the one here, or you can buy a commercial version. Then all traffic routed to the router will be Torified no matter what application it is. There are pros and cons to this, and we have a separate section on Tor and VPN routers. There are some applications that have been developed for blocking non-Tor traffic. Here is Tor Total. Tor Total is a free open source solution for Windows that transparently routes all TCP and DNS traffic through Tor. You might consider this if you want to use Windows and leaks worry you. I would not recommend Windows though, but you still could use this as a gateway via some sort of virtual machine, and you wouldn't have to be using Windows as your main workstation. This is Corridor. This is a Tor traffic whitelisting gateway. This allows only connections to Tor relays to pass through, so no clear text leaks, but client computers are themselves responsible for torifying their own traffic. In other words, it is a filtering gateway, not a proxifying gateway. Again, set up to prevent leaks. You could also use this in a VM as well, but as I've said, you have Whonix pre-built anyway. So those are the various options for getting any sort of application to go through Tor, making it as safe as possible. We're going to talk through the Tor weaknesses now, and what might de-anonymize you, and what finally you can do about it. To get some insight into how the NSA and GCHQ view de-anonymizing Tor, or at least how they viewed it in 2013, we can look at this document here, one of the leaked presentations. we go down here. We will never be able to de-anonymize all users all the time, but with manual analysis, we can de-anonymize a small fraction of Tor users. This statement, I think, is still relatively true, although they will be moving away from manual analysis towards more automated analysis as time goes by. But if you are a target, or what you do or where you go makes you a target, you could be part of that small fraction. So let's go through some of the weaknesses and what you might do to mitigate them. So the first point, Tor is high profile. Many nation states' intelligence agencies have declared war on Tor and will spend serious time and resources attempting to de-anonymize the users. These agencies are concerned about what they can't see, what you're doing, and why. You paint a target on your back by even using Tor and will get placed on automatic profiling lists. Plus, attacks against Tor are an active area of academic and security research. Tor is high profile, there's no doubt about that. Tor is also complex, and complexity is the nemesis of security and breeds mistakes. The Tor browser is a good attempt to make Tor appear and be much more simple to the average user, but it's easy to get Tor wrong if you start making special configurations in that talk file or various other changes. And to be really safe, when the consequences are high, you do need to make some changes. Two examples of changes you need to make are: 1, you need to better isolate the Tor browser, i.e. just installing it in your standard operating system, that's really no good at all. And 2, you need better purging of the browser recorded data. The Tor browser does an excellent job of removing that data, but for me, it's not good enough when the stakes are high. So let's cover these two issues now. The Tor browser is not sufficiently isolated from exploitation. Nation states will spend serious time and resources in buying and developing exploits for the Tor Firefox browser. We know the NSA, FBI, and GCHQ use the quantum system, Fox Acid, and egotistical giraffe to actively compromise browsers. Selected extracts from here show details of how the NSA's egotistical giraffe is used to attack Tor users. We also know the US agencies had success in August 2013. The Firefox browser, in many older versions of the Tor browser, was vulnerable to a JavaScript type attack, as NoScript was not enabled and is still not enabled by default. Once exploited, the victim's machines would then send the MAC address and IP address and Windows computer name to the attackers. Note, this only targeted Windows users. So we should make the general assumption that serious nation states will have exploits for the Tor browser, or if they don't, they certainly may do tomorrow. If your adversary is a serious nation state, then your security and privacy settings should be on high. JavaScript disabled, never any active content such as Java, JavaScript, Adobe Flash, Adobe Shockwave, QuickTime, Real Audio, ActiveX, etc. Don't install extensions and plugins unless you really know what you're doing. You need the smallest attack surface in your Tor browser. But even that's not good enough. Never install the browser on your main operating system, and especially not on Windows, and especially not on Windows 10. Your main operating system is a soft target. You need to use isolation and compartmentalization. Look at that section in this course which provides details on how to provide isolation and compartmentalization for your browser by using things like virtual machines, sandboxes, physical isolation, cubes like you can see here, and so on, to create the isolation for the browser, or even use dedicated securely built devices for your isolation. Never install the Tor browser on your main operating system if the consequences are high. You need isolation, and the isolation also needs to be hardened. I consider browser exploits one of the biggest risks for de-anonymizing you that you have to mitigate. If you're just running the Tor browser in Windows, that's just not a good idea. Assume the Tor browser is exploitable, mitigate through isolation. The second issue I mentioned, the lack of browser non-persistence. The browser is persistent, so all the data it collects has to be deleted. According to Tor, after closing all tabs, they then emit browser:"purge session history", which instructs add-ons and various Firefox components to clear their session state, and then manually clear the following state: search box and find box text, HTTP auth, SSL state, OCSP state, site-specific content preferences including HSTS state, content and image cache, offline storage, cookies, crypto tokens, DOM storage, the safe browsing key, and the Google Wi-Fi geolocation token if it exists. We also clear NoScript's site and temporary permissions and all other browser site permissions. So that's a lot of things that are cleared, but only non-persistence can future-proof against the next unknown tracking threat that could be stored in your browser and not deleted. Relatively recently, HSTS was used to track browsers, which was previously unknown of. So relying on the Tor browser to purge the browser's data isn't good enough if the consequences are high. You need non-persistence. You can get this through options like live operating systems such as Tails and VM snapshots, and you can also help mitigate this with special secure delete and whole disk encryption, or a combination of. And what I mean by non-persistence is that the entire application and its data no longer exist anymore, and it goes back to its original state after you have finished with it. The browser fingerprint. It is obvious to an observer you are using the Tor browser because it has a unique fingerprint, which should make you look identical to all the other Tor users unless you do things like maximize your browser. So this is great for anonymity in some ways, but it makes you stand out to anyone who is targeting Tor users. And we know that Tor users are targeted in the examples of the NSA and GCHQ with egotistical giraffe. So by using Tor, this makes you a target, and because they can't distinguish between people who they are actually interested in and who they are not, this makes everyone using Tor a target. Traffic confirmation or end-to-end correlation attacks, and in combination with Sybil attacks and or DDoS attacks. So Tor is a low latency anonymizing service. This means the traffic has to get to the destination quickly and come back quickly. You can't wait 5 minutes for a response when you're browsing the web, or you're just going to get bored, you're not going to use Tor. As I have said previously, all low latency anonymizing services, VPNs, Tor, John Dunham, are susceptible to traffic confirmation or end-to-end correlation attacks. Let me read from the Tor blog. A traffic confirmation attack is possible when the attacker controls or observes the relays on both ends of the Tor circuit and then compares traffic timing, volume, or other characteristics to conclude that the two relays are indeed on the same circuit. If the first relay in the circuit, called the entry guard, knows the IP address of the user, and the last relay in the circuit knows the resource or destination she is accessing, then together they can de-anonymize her. And you can read more about traffic confirmation attacks, including pointers to many research papers, on this blog post here. If we compare Tor to VPNs, which is not really an equal comparison, in some ways traffic confirmation attacks are easier with Tor than with VPNs, and in other ways they are harder with Tor. It is not easy for an adversary to take control of VPN servers, making it harder to correlate traffic, and especially if the VPN is in a country out of the sphere of influence of your adversary. It is part of the design of Tor that anyone can run a Tor relay, making it easier to do correlation attacks on Tor if you act as a number of relays. An example of a Sybil attack is where you are running Tor relays and clients to establish trust, either by passively observing and or potentially injecting traffic. This is known as a Sybil attack. There is human oversight over the Tor network, which could detect traffic alterations, but this will not prevent passive observation in a Sybil attack. It is in fact not part of the Tor design to defend against correlation attacks, although it does in some way do that. The big advantage for Tor over VPNs in my initial comparison for traffic correlation attacks is that Tor has many more nodes and users than the average VPN service, making correlation a much larger problem. The larger the network gets, the larger the Tor network gets, the better the anonymity it will provide, and defense against correlation and Sybil attacks in combination and separately. A notable Sybil attack in combination with a traffic confirmation attack was launched against the Tor anonymity network for several months in 2014 by unknown perpetrators, probably the NSA or CIA. Autonomous system. An autonomous system is a collection of connected IP routing prefixes under the control of one or more network operator that presents a common, clearly defined routing policy to the internet. They are uniquely identified as individual networks on the internet, an AS, an autonomous system. A large telco or ISP might administer one of these autonomous systems. And why does this matter, you might ask? Well, if your Tor circuit and destination exists within a single AS, the administrator of the AS could perform a traffic confirmation attack on the entry and exit segments of the path and potentially infer the destination with which the client communicated. It is my personal opinion that traffic confirmation attacks, especially in combination with a passive or active Sybil attack, i.e. running lots of relays and clients and watching and or changing the traffic, is one of the most likely methods to de-anonymize you and Tor users going forward. They could also DDoS relays, forcing their target onto other relays they own. An adversary with sufficient means to have international influence would find it much easier to perform, although just having enough resources is all they may require, especially if they are targeting someone in particular. If you're interested more in traffic correlation attack, there's a paper here, Traffic Correlation on Tor by Realistic Adversaries. You might want to give that a read if traffic correlation attacks interest you. Website traffic fingerprinting against Tor traffic. It is possible that Tor is vulnerable to an attack called website traffic fingerprinting, which you may recall I mentioned in the section on VPNs. It is a passive eavesdropping attack that looks at the size and timing of encrypted data streams, where although the adversary only sees encrypted traffic, the adversary can still guess what web page is being visited, because all web pages have specific traffic patterns. They can only guess if they know the pattern of the web page in advance though, so if you're going to pages they were not aware of, they wouldn't have a pattern for it. The content of the transmission is still encrypted and hidden, but to which web page you connect to, or even the site, because they know the page, isn't private or secret anymore. There are multiple research papers, as I have mentioned. From what I have read, I think the attacks against Tor are overstated and not a problem yet, but something definitely to watch. And this is the latest paper that I'm familiar with on the topic of Tor fingerprinting. And for more information on this, there are some links here. To mitigate this, you could use multiple chained anonymizing services and or offsite connections, which we will discuss later. Exit node eavesdropping. This has been mentioned in a couple of videos. Tor by design does nothing to make private the data that comes out of the exit node to the final destination to surf the web. Anyone running an exit node will be able to see all unencrypted traffic, and much worse, inject into that traffic things like zombie super cookies to track you, or malware to try to exploit your device. The obvious mitigation to this is end-to-end encryption, TLS for example, and PGP, etc. Tor does, however, provide end-to-end encryption when you're using hidden services, or the darknet or the dark web, the .onion servers. There is end-to-end encryption there, making these more private to use than using the surface web. Traffic analysis attacks. Tor has been shown in the past to be susceptible to analysis of the traffic by a passive observer if they can see enough relays. And this is the last report that I found on the subject if you want to read more about traffic analysis attacks. Tor is susceptible to man in the middle and man on the side attacks. This is not really a weakness of Tor, but a weakness of the fundamentals of the internet. An adversary with sufficient means and reach can intercept your requests and respond to them before the destination, fooling you into thinking you are communicating with the real destination. The NSA are known to do this. This is a known technique of the quantum system. Your client would then be subject to active attacks, such as trying to exploit vulnerabilities in your browser and insert zombie super cookies to track you. Tor is susceptible, like anything else, to vulnerabilities in the underlying technology that it uses, and one such vulnerability could be discovered to erode the anonymity of the service. A previous example of a widespread bug is the Heartbleed bug. If you don't run your Tor connection permanently, it's obvious to an observer when you are attempting to do something private or anonymous. This can draw closer attention to when you are using Tor. As we've already discussed, but it is a weakness, relays and bridges can be blocked. It is trivial to block all relays, preventing people from using Tor. It is also not so difficult to block hidden bridges using tools like ZMap. Not really a weakness, but an issue. Ports are blocked. Some ports are blocked by some relays on Tor. Ports you might need to use, for example to get through a firewall, could be blocked by many of the relays. You will then have to use a circuit that is often slower. Directory authorities are a single point of security failure for Tor. This is a known issue. If these directory authorities are compromised, then Tor is fully compromised. DNS leaking. When using other applications with Tor, you risk protocol leaks. This has been demonstrated many times with many applications, including Thunderbird years ago and BitTorrent now. And while on the topic, no BitTorrents on Tor. BitTorrents can leak your IP address. There's a blog post on it here and a research paper if you want to understand more about how BitTorrents leak on Tor. You get captchas pop up, slowing you down, and your language can be preset incorrectly when you're visiting various sites and doing searches. The sites you use and access your accounts with can flag you as being suspicious or having suspicious activity and then block, lock or suspend your accounts because you are using Tor. Maybe the IP address of the exit node has a tainted history, or they may know you're using Tor and they don't like that, or they will see you're from a country that you're not normally from. All of this could be seen as suspicious activity and your account blocked, locked, suspended. That's happened to me. It's a pain. If you see this URL here, this is a list of services blocked by Tor. That is a problem. Tor is blocked by some websites, some destinations that you do want to visit. There is no UDP on Tor. Tor doesn't currently support UDP, although it does provide a DNS port. If you require UDP, Whonix provides a limited workaround for using UDP. And the final weakness is speed. Tor is slower than some privacy/anonymizing services such as VPN and the ClearNet, but Tor is getting much better and much faster, and the latency issues are improving. So these are my concluding thoughts on Tor, and then some mitigations to reduce the risk. Where your adversary has little resources or the consequences are low, Tor prevents your ISP or local network from knowing what sites you visit. Tor prevents a site you visited from knowing who you are, unless you tell them in some way, and Tor prevents corporate tracking, and it helps to evade censorship. But world intelligence agencies have declared war on Tor. They are concerned about what they cannot see, what you are doing, and why. Tor is arguably the best anonymizing network, but it's far from perfect and under constant attack to de-anonymize the users. Against a well-resourced adversary, staying anonymous is extremely difficult, even with Tor, because of the fundamental nature of the internet. If you think you are specifically targeted by a well-resourced adversary with international reach, or visit locations that might be targeted and the consequences are high, Tor should not be relied upon to anonymize you. The biggest weaknesses, as I see it, number one is not maintaining good OPSEC. You are likely to make human errors. This will always be your biggest weakness. Other big concerns for Tor: traffic correlation and civil attacks, attacks against the browser, as I said, that's a concern, and also attacks against the host operating system, which is a soft target. You can mitigate and reduce the possibility of a well-resourced or non-well-resourced adversary from de-anonymizing you, and here are my recommended security controls. First, as mentioned, get a control of your OPSEC. This is priority 1. Review the OPSEC section and make any needed changes. Use isolation and compartmentalization to reduce the impact and possibility of browser exploits being successful. You can use hardened virtual machines, physical isolation, sandboxes, and so on. Never install the Tor browser on your main operating system if the consequences are high. See the section on isolation and compartmentalization for more information on how to do that with the Tor browser. Take extra steps to not maintain history through non-persistence. You can get this through options such as live operating systems like Tails and VM snapshots, and you can further mitigate with things like special deletion, like secure deletion and whole disk encryption. A number of sections cover this on the course. Always use a Tor browser with high security settings and don't add extensions. Consider using Unix or Tails in the ways I have recommended in those sections, and you could also consider using multiple chained anonymizing systems and offsite connections to help reduce the risk from some types of de-anonymizing attacks. Now, see those sections on how to do that, but warning, doing that wrong could put you more at risk. Apply all of the other security controls detailed throughout the course as is relevant to your situation. Assume all locations you visit are in the control of your adversary and mitigate appropriately. Assume the network you traverse is in the control of your adversary and mitigate appropriately. Assume your adversary has zero-day remote code browser exploits, mitigate appropriately. And assume an active traffic confirmation and Sybil attack while you are using Tor and mitigate appropriately, as just described. I recommend periodically checking the Tor project blog for status updates, and also check Tor client and relay counts. Make sure they look normal. I also recommend reading the Tor design documents, which are here. So that's Tor weaknesses and the recommended security controls to help mitigate against those weaknesses. I hope that helps you in using Tor and what you can do to reduce your risk. This is an article written by Bruce Schneier, published in The Guardian, October 2013, but still very valid and worth reading. It provides information on the quantum system and Fox Acid, the platforms used by the NSA to de-anonymize Tor users. Even if you don't consider the NSA or GCHQ or the Five Eyes your adversary, it is a good read to understand how Tor is attacked. It is all of the methods by which we have gone through, but it provides some context in relation to an agency. You can read it yourself now, or you can listen to it now as it's read back on the video. If you want to read it yourself, my conclusions are at the end after about 10 minutes.
The online anonymity network Tor is a high-priority target for the National Security Agency. The work of attacking Tor is done by the NSA's Application Vulnerabilities Branch, which is part of the Systems Intelligence Directorate, or SID. The majority of NSA employees work in SID, which is tasked with collecting data from communication systems around the world. According to a top-secret NSA presentation provided by the whistleblower Edward Snowden, one successful technique the NSA has developed involves exploiting the Tor browser bundle, a collection of programs designed to make it easier for people to install and use the software. The trick identifies Tor users on the internet and then executes an attack against their Firefox web browser. The NSA refers to these capabilities as CNE, or computer network exploitation. The first step of this process is finding Tor users. To accomplish this, the NSA relies on its vast capability to monitor large parts of the internet. This is done via the agency's partnership with US telecoms firms under programs codenamed Stormview, Fairview, Oakster and Blarney. The NSA creates fingerprints that detect HTTP requests from the Tor network to particular servers. These fingerprints are loaded into NSA database systems like XKeyscore, a bespoke collection and analysis tool which NSA boasts allows its analysts to see almost everything a target does on the internet. Using powerful data analysis tools with codenames such as turbulence, turmoil and tumult, the NSA automatically sifts through the enormous amount of internet traffic that it sees, looking for Tor connections. Last month, Brazilian TV news show Fantástico showed screenshots of an NSA tool that had the ability to identify Tor users by monitoring internet traffic. The very feature that makes Tor a powerful anonymity service, and the fact that all Tor users look alike on the internet, makes it easy to differentiate Tor users from other web users. On the other hand, the anonymity provided by Tor makes it impossible for the NSA to know who the user is, or whether or not the user is in the US. After identifying an individual Tor user on the internet, the NSA uses its network of secret internet servers to redirect those users to another set of secret internet servers, with the codename FoxAcid, to infect the user's computer. FoxAcid is an NSA system designed to act as a matchmaker between potential targets and attacks developed by the NSA, giving the agency opportunity to launch prepared attacks against their systems. Once the computer is successfully attacked, it secretly calls back to FoxAcid server, which then performs additional attacks on the target computer to ensure that it remains compromised long term, and continues to provide eavesdropping information back to the NSA, exploiting the Tor browser bundle. Tor is a well-designed and robust anonymity tool, and successfully attacking it is difficult. The NSA attacks we found individually target Tor users by exploiting vulnerabilities in their Firefox browsers, and not the Tor application directly. This, too, is difficult. Tor users often turn off vulnerable services like scripts and Flash when using Tor, making it difficult to target those services. Even so, the NSA uses a series of native Firefox vulnerabilities to attack users of the Tor browser bundle. According to the training presentation provided by Snowden, Egotistical Giraffe exploits a type confusion vulnerability in E4X, which is an XML extension for JavaScript. This vulnerability exists in Firefox 11.0 to 16.0, as well as Firefox 10.0 ESR, the Firefox version used until recently in the Tor browser bundle. According to another document, the vulnerability exploited by Egotistical Giraffe was inadvertently fixed when Mozilla removed the E4X library with the vulnerability, and when Tor added that Firefox version into the Tor browser bundle. But NSA were confident that they would be able to find a replacement Firefox exploit that worked against version 17.0 ESR, the quantum system. To trick targets into visiting a FoxAcid server, the NSA relies on its secret partnerships with US telecoms companies. As part of the turmoil system, the NSA places secret servers, codenamed Quantum, at key places on the internet backbone. This placement ensures that they can react faster than other websites can. By exploiting that speed difference, these servers can impersonate a visited website to the target before the legitimate website can respond, thereby tricking the target's browser to visit a FoxAcid server. In the academic literature, these are called man-in-the-middle attacks, and have been known to the commercial and academic security communities. More specifically, they are examples of man-on-the-side attacks. They are hard for any organization other than the NSA to reliably execute, because they require the attacker to have a privileged position on the internet backbone, and exploit a race condition between the NSA server and the legitimate website. This top-secret NSA diagram, made public last month, shows a quantum server impersonating Google in this type of attack. The NSA uses these fast quantum servers to execute a packet injection attack, which surreptitiously redirects the target to the FoxAcid server. An article in the German magazine Spiegel, based on additional top-secret Snowden documents, mentions an NSA-developed attack technology with the name of Quantum Insert that performs redirection attacks. Another top-secret Tor presentation provided by Snowden mentions Quantum Cookie to force cookies onto target browsers, and another Quantum program to degrade disrupt Tor access. This same technique is used by the Chinese government to block its citizens from reading censored internet content, and has been hypothesized as a probable NSA attack technique, the FoxAcid system. According to various top-secret documents provided by Snowden, FoxAcid is the NSA codename for what the NSA calls an exploit orchestrator, an internet-enabled system capable of attacking target computers in a variety of different ways. It is a Windows 2003 computer configured with custom software and a series of Perl scripts. These servers are run by the NSA's Tailored Access Operations, or TAO, group. Tau is another subgroup of the Systems Intelligence Directorate. The servers are on the public internet. They have normal-looking domain names and can be visited by any browser from anywhere. Ownership of those domains cannot be traced back to the NSA. However, if a browser tries to visit a FoxAcid server with a special URL called a FoxAcid tag, the server attempts to infect that browser and then the computer in an effort to take control of it. The NSA can trick browsers into using that URL using a variety of methods, including the race condition attack mentioned above and frame injection attacks. FoxAcid tags are designed to look innocuous, so that anyone who sees them would not be suspicious. An example of one such tag, link removed, is given in another top-secret training presentation provided by Snowden. There is no currently registered domain name by that name. It is just an example for internal NSA training purposes. The training material states that merely trying to visit the homepage of a real FoxAcid server will not result in any attack, and that a specialized URL is required. This URL would be created by Tau for a specific NSA operation, and unique to that operation and target. This allows the FoxAcid server to know exactly who the target is when his computer contacts it. According to Snowden, FoxAcid is a general CNE system, used for many types of attacks other than the Tor attacks described here. It is designed to be modular, with flexibility that allows Tau to swap and replace exploits if they are discovered, and only run certain exploits against certain types of targets. The most valuable exploits are saved for the most important targets. Low-value exploits are run against technically sophisticated targets where the chance of detection is high. Tau maintains a library of exploits, each based on a different vulnerability in a system. Different exploits are authorized against different targets, depending on the value of the target, the target's technical sophistication, the value of the exploit, and other considerations. In the case of Tor users, FoxAcid might use egotistical giraffe against their Firefox browsers. According to a top-secret operational management procedures manual provided by Snowden, once a target is successfully exploited, it is infected with one of several payloads. Two basic payloads mentioned in the manual are designed to collect configuration and location information from the target computer so an analyst can determine how to further infect the computer. These decisions are made in part by the technical sophistication of the target and the security software installed on the target computer, called Personal Security Products or PSP. In the manual, FoxAcid payloads are updated regularly by Tau. For example, the manual refers to version 8.2.1 of one of them. FoxAcid servers also have sophisticated capabilities to avoid detection and to ensure successful infection of its targets. The operations manual states that a FoxAcid payload with the codename Diascollop can circumvent commercial products that prevent malicious software from making changes to a system that survive a reboot process. The NSA also uses phishing attacks to induce users to click on FoxAcid tags. Tau additionally uses FoxAcid to exploit callbacks, which is the general term for a computer infected by some automatic means, calling back to the NSA for more instructions and possibly to upload data from the target computer. According to a top-secret operational management procedures manual, FoxAcid servers configured to receive callbacks are codenamed Frugal Shot. After a callback, the FoxAcid server may run more exploits to ensure that the target computer remains compromised long-term, as well as install implants designed to exfiltrate data. By 2008, the NSA was getting so much FoxAcid callback data that they needed to build a special system to manage it all.
So there you are. Without even having the advantage of this leaked information, I would have already assumed these methods would be used by nation states, especially the United States and the United Kingdom. These are pretty crafty methods, but nothing anyone who understands security wouldn't have sketched out after about 10 minutes of thought. Man in the middle and man in the side attacks, attacking the browser, frame injection attacks, injecting cookies, degrade, deny, disrupt Tor access, which could be used in timing attacks for de-anonymization. Pretty standard stuff if you understand security. The security mitigations in the course already address all these methods and hopefully future methods too. The article highlights the need for protection against stored injected super cookies, which we do through any number of methods of non-persistence like live operating systems and evidence elimination, which we cover. It highlights the need to be able to contain a browser exploit or zero-day vulnerability that you cannot patch. an expected attack vector. We mitigate this through isolation and compartmentalization techniques such as sandboxes, VMs, physical isolation, browser hardening, reducing the attack surface, hiding unique hardware IDs, not using Flash, Java, JavaScript, active content, using Tor gateways, and or using the Tor browser on its highest security settings, and so on. And as always, through good operational security. Deals with telcos are required as part of these attack methods to find Tor users, or they need to have access to boxes spread across the internet, which presumably they will need to have hacked in order to get access to, which we know the Five Eyes do, and so will most nation states as well, so potentially your adversary. This means that attempting to escape your adversary's sphere of influence is or could be a valid mitigation against this type of attack, as long as doing that doesn't make you stand out further, meaning routing through places dark to your adversary with, say for example, a nested VPN would mitigate the type of attacks mentioned in this article. But you have to know what you're doing. When you add complexity, you could increase your risk if you get it wrong. See the section on nesting anonymizing services. Against a nation state like the NSA, you have to assume that everywhere you visit is a potential bad actor, and you have to mitigate accordingly, and that goes the same for any powerful adversary like or of the likes of the NSA. I previously showed you the Tor darknet and how it was accessed via the .onion addresses, which you can see here in the URL bar. You can think of a hidden service, if you're not aware, as a relay that also offers a web service or other type internet service that is accessible via the .onion URL. The real IP address is hidden behind a Tor circuit. In order to run a hidden service, you need to set up Tor as normal, install a web server or whatever service it is that you want to present, add a couple of lines to your talk file as we have discussed. Here's an example here. Tor will generate a new public-private key pair for your hidden service, which is written into a file called private_key. The other file Tor creates is called hostname. This contains a short summary of the public key and is the name of the .onion address, like this one that you see here. And of course, if you want to run a hidden service, if you want to run a web server, etc., you need to make sure that it is securely hardened, because if it is not, it could definitely leak the real IP address, which makes it pointless. As I've said, Unix could be used to set up a hidden service, and in fact this link here is from Unix on how to set it up. If your hidden service is running on a Unix workstation, because it goes through the gateway, it's very difficult for an attacker or malware to tunnel out and work out what the real IP address of that workstation is. If you're wondering about the content of the darknet, this is one study that I've seen that shows the following types of sites and or content that is on the Tor darknet. This is Tor to web. Hidden services can also be accessed from a standard web browser without client-side connection to the Tor network, using services like Tor to web. Wherever you see a URL like this one, you just need to replace the .onion with .onion.to, .onion.city, .onion.cab, etc. If I go here, here's an example. I've added onion.to, and this is taking me to the hidden wiki without going over the Tor network. But note, Tor to web only protects the publishers, not the readers. So this is not a anonymous or private or anything way of getting to these services. It's just a way of getting to them, but without any form of privacy and anonymity. Finding Tor hidden services can be a little bit tricky, as a darknet isn't indexed by the surface web search engines that we are used to. Popular sources of dark web .onion links are Pastebin, Twitter, Reddit, and other internet forums, and you can Google in association with those, like for example Pastebin and Tor links. and you'll find links to pastebin content like this that lists lots of .onion sites. Tor is decentralized by design. There is no direct readable list of all hidden services, although a number of hidden services catalog publicly known Onion addresses. Here is one such place, and here you can see the same site with lots and lots of listings of .onion addresses and sites. This one claiming to be some form of WikiLeaks. This is one of the sites claiming to be the uncensored hidden wiki, although there are many sites that claim to be the hidden wiki and the uncensored hidden wiki of Tor. Be very careful where you click here. This is uncensored and you could end up in places you don't want to go. But because it is uncensored, it is generally good for stuff for security, privacy and anonymity. And there are some other introduction points here. For example, we've got the Talk search engine, the Not Evil search engine, and Sinbad. You can try all of those out, but personally I've not found them to be that good. Really, you need lists of the .onion addresses. That really is the best way to find things. So as I said, Pastebin, Twitter, Reddit, the hidden wikis, check out these introduction points as well, and you should be well on your way into getting lost into the dark net. DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, are developing Memex, which will be used by intelligence agencies for domain-specific searches. The idea is to help prevent crime on the dark web, but this will equally be an issue for non-criminals seeking privacy and anonymity. We will have to see how this project evolves. It is potentially the Google of the darknet. I'll show you some of the other Tor apps that are out there. This is Orbit, which is a proxy for Tor. It's by the Guardian project. Orbit is essentially Tor for Android. It is a proxy app that works similar to the desktop app. You can use Orbit with Twitter, DuckDuckGo, or any app with a proxy feature. I haven't personally tested this. This is Orfox, Tor browser for Android. This is still in beta, haven't tested this. Tor for iOS or the iPhone. This is the Onion browser. I haven't tested this either. And when it comes to all of these Tor applications, mobile phones are terminally unprivate, so use where the consequences are low. These should not be considered as safe as the Tor regular browser. There is Tor Messenger, which you can see here and get here. It's in beta as of recording this, which looks like this on OS X. And as they describe, Tor Messenger is a cross-platform chat program that aims to be secure by default and sends all its traffic over Tor. It supports a wide variety of transport networks, including Jabber, which is XMPP, IRC, Google Talk, Facebook Chat, Twitter, Yahoo, and others. Enables off-the-record or OTR messaging automatically, and has an easy-to-use graphical user interface localized into multiple languages. It is still in beta, but is a promising project. And OnionCat, this is an interesting concept. OnionCat is a VPN adapter. Let me just click on here so you can see. It's a VPN adapter which allows you to connect 2 or more computers or networks through VPN tunnels. It is designed to use the anonymous network's Tor or I2P as its transport. Hence, it provides location-based anonymity while still creating tunnel endpoints with private unique IP addresses. So essentially, you can connect distant networks or computers together and have a virtual network that is run through or anonymized through Tor or ITP. Quite an interesting little concept and nice diagram.